Thank you for coming. This is a great solution for smaller fibroids and somewhat larger fibroids since 1999. It's the result of years of research and development, and we work super hard on it. It's a whole new way of thinking about fibroids based on new scientific evidence. It's an incredible system for treating smaller fibroids and to a lesser extent the larger fibroids. Some women believe that it has been a lifesaver. How do I know that someone believes it's been a lifesaver? I got this email. I had suffered for many years with uterine fibroids. Many doctors will tell you, as did mine, that fibroid tumors will not shrink and can only be treated surgically. My ultrasound showed many fibroids, some the size of a baseball. And after about 10 years of heavy bleeding, anemia, and abdomen pain, I finally scheduled the surgery, not knowing how I could pay for it, as I did not have health insurance at the time. I started a regular regime with Progestel and castor oil packs, and in 3 months, her fibroids were down by 1/3, as proven by a second ultrasound. Needless to say, I canceled my surgery and continued the Progestel regime. Now, several years later, I recommend Progestel to every woman that I know that wants to feel normal again. I started using it for fibroids, but it has made my hair thicker, my skin younger, and it's even sailed me through menopause without a care. I have been able to discontinue my antidepressants too. Thank you so much for Progestel. It has been a lifesaver. I thought I'd just share another testimony. I had fibroids. The biggest was 5 centimeters in diameter and was told to have an operation to get rid of them. But I was extremely afraid of operations, even afraid of doctors. So I did a little research and found out about Dr. Eckhart's website and about Progestel oil. I used the oil for 3 weeks and then had another ultrasound to see whether it worked or not. To my amazement, my largest fibroid had shrunk to 3 centimeters, and my gynecologist said that there was no need for an operation. I am 300% sure that this happened because of Dr. Eckhart's all-natural Progestel oil. Most importantly, the size of my largest fibroid shrank from 5 centimeters to 3 centimeters, as proven by my ultrasound at the end of May. I was so surprised by the result. When I told the gynecologist that I used Progestel oil, she said, "That's nonsense. No such thing could cure fibroids." However, she could not explain why it had shrunk and suggested that I take Miranda. I said no. I left the office promising myself never to come back to her or to similar people. So these emails remind us about why we do what we do. We have 18,000 customers that use Progestel, and 2,000 of these are fibroid patients. We've been in business since 1999 to 2013. And we have about a 60 to 80% success rate. Better with fibroids smaller than a grapefruit, and less success with larger fibroids, larger than the grapefruit. Larger fibroids seem to have an emotional component. Women that are upset or in conflict seem to have the larger fibroids. It seems that their emotional state seems to impair the excretion of xenoestrogens. We ship to 31 countries: Sweden, Norway, Finland, Iceland, France, Great Britain, Spain, Italy, Greece, Singapore, Japan, Korea, Australia, Malaysia, and Taiwan. So here's our product. It's Progestel, Natural Progesterone. It's just 2 ingredients: coconut oil and USP pharmaceutical-grade bioidentical progesterone. This is our product, and we're really happy with it and our solution. So what are fibroids? Fibroids are also known as myomas. They're basically made of smooth muscle of the uterus. 62% of women in the U.S. will get a hysterectomy, and most likely it is because of a fibroid. So, the natural question is, what causes a fibroid to grow? Well, estrogen stimulates fibroids to grow. After menopause and estrogen levels drop to 40% of premenopause levels, estrogen levels drop. and fibroids typically, but not always, shrink and disappear. This proves that estrogen stimulates fibroids to grow. Progesterone may help fibroids. Only take progesterone if the fibroid is smaller than a grapefruit. If day 1 is the first day of your period, take it from days 6 through 26 if you do not want to conceive immediately. Otherwise, take it from days 14 through 26. So, what is estrogen dominance? Estrogen dominance is too much estrogen. And where is the excess estrogen coming from? Xenoestrogens. Xenoestrogens contribute to fibroids. And what are xenoestrogens? Xenoestrogens are chemicals or herbs that mimic estrogen, but they are strange estrogens. Progesterone can balance out small amounts of xenoestrogens. However, progesterone cannot balance out large amounts of xenoestrogens. Progesterone with large amounts of xenoestrogens or a potent xenoestrogen will make your fibroid worse until you stop the progesterone. So, progesterone is the hormone of pregnancy and occurs during the latter half of the cycle before the age of 35. Pro means for, gesterone means for gestation. Progesterone means for gestation, and it's important to use natural progesterone. Natural progesterone is the same identical hormone your body makes. Progesterone does not cause birth defects. In fact, the fertility MDs, the test tube baby guys, routinely use natural progesterone to stop miscarriage. However, synthetic brand name progestins cause birth defects according to the physician's desk manual. Caution: many over-the-counter and pharmacy compounded progesterone creams contain estrogenic herbs and preservatives. So I'd like to share with you a very painful lesson that I learned. You may have to be very careful because many of the over-the-counter progesterone creams and even the compounded progesterone creams contain estrogenic herbs and preservatives. Back in 1999, when I started treating endometriosis patients, I would tell them to buy an off-the-shelf progesterone cream. My patients would call me back and say, "Hey doc, now I'm worse. What's the deal?" So let me explain what happened. In 1999, my 70-year-old mother had a fibroid the size of a grapefruit. She had been on synthetic estrogen. I took her off the synthetic estrogen. Likely, if I had done this alone, her fibroid would have disappeared. I read John Lee's MD's book, What Your Doctor May Not Tell You About Menopause, and he suggested to give her progesterone cream to make her fibroid disappear. And so from his list of creams in the book, I bought one and sent it to my mother. After 1 month of using it, she called me back and said her fibroid was bigger now. So I began to study the particular progesterone cream I had given her. They said they had purposely put rosemary in their cream for hot flashes, and it was a phytoestrogen. Naturally, my next question was, what's a phytoestrogen? And they answered, they are plants that act like estrogen. So I went back to John Lee MD's book and got a second cream and gave that to my mother. And in 3 months, the fibroid had disappeared. Then I became curious about the second cream, and I went down to visit my brother in Austin, Texas, and used the University of Texas MSDS computer database to check out the ingredients. I found that this particular cream contains sterylconium chloride. 3 cc's of sterylconium chloride taken orally causes fatal convulsions in adults. And so if my mother had eaten a third of this particular progesterone cream, a third of the bottle, she would have died of fatal convulsions. And so I called them up and asked them, how can you do this? And they answered, we're doing nothing wrong. This is a standard cream. We mix progesterone in it and package it. Then I started looking at all the department stores and found that the vast majority of cosmetics and toiletries contain ingredients that were not good for you. The chemicals could either be toxic, cancer-causing, or hormone disruptive, and all 3 of these categories must be considered separately. Then I started looking at the health food store. I love the health food store. I buy organic food from them, but many of the products had estrogenic herbs in them. In fact, many of the compounded progesterone creams had parabens in them as a preservative on them. Now, parabens have been used for 30 years. They're not toxic, not carcinogenic, not hormone disruptive when taken by mouth, orally. Parabens on the skin are not toxic. They're not cancer-causing. However, parabens on the skin increase rat uteri weight by 22%. Those little rat uteruses, if you put parabens on the skin of a rat, it will increase it by 22%. So, parabens on the skin made my endometriosis patients worse. And so, well, what are xenoestrogens? Xenoestrogens are chemicals or herbs that mimic estrogen, and they're strange estrogen. And they can contribute to fibroids. So progesterone can balance out small amounts of xenoestrogens, but progesterone cannot balance out large amounts of xenoestrogens. Progesterone with large amounts of xenoestrogens, again, will make your fibroids worse until you stop the progesterone. So again, I'd like to show you a teaser video from Frontline PBS about xenoestrogens. Let's roll the video.
Six years ago, marine biologists became alarmed at reports of massive fish kills on the rivers in this region. Every year, smallmouth bass were being decimated by some mysterious problem. Spring and fall, hundreds of fish would be found floating in the water, belly up.
So you see this.
I caught up with Vicki Blazer, a fish pathologist with the U.S. Geological Survey, who was trying to figure out why the fish were dying. What do we got here?
So here we have this large discolored area in the liver.
Yeah.
And then you see all these little white spots. Here's another totally discolored area.
And that's a signal of some bigger problem.
Yes, when we see a really high prevalence in a population, that indicates there's some problem going on in that water.
And when Blazer dug deeper, she found a surprise.
One of the major and most interesting findings was intersex in the male bass. When we look at the male gonads or testes, what we find is immature eggs within the male testes.
So you got sort of feminization of male fish. Is that a big, alarming finding in marine biology, aquatic biology?
Yes, and that has certainly attracted a lot of concern and attention.
Scientific studies have linked abnormal mutations in marine creatures, like intersex, to exposure to chemical compounds that mimic or imitate natural hormones in the body. These chemicals are called endocrine disruptors.
Endocrine disruptors are very, very potent chemicals at infinitesimally small quantification. I mean, you're talking about parts per million or parts per billion. They interrupt the normal way in which the body controls everything from growth and development to thyroid function to reproductive function to estrogen levels, testosterone levels. So they're very, very important, and they are a deep concern because there's so many of them now.
There are thousands of these worrisome chemicals that have gotten into the environment, and one reason is that they're part of everything we do.
The list of things that bring these organic pollutants into our bodies is a long list, and it ranges from home care products, soaps, toothpaste, cleaning agents in the household, to things we put on our lawns, the things that we use all the time, the plastic industry, the rubber industry, lubricants, fuels, the highways.
When you see scientists like Vicki Blazer cutting open fish, finding intersex in the male fish, seeing high levels of fish kills, seeing immune systems disrupted, seeing other damage to the fish, is that a warning to you potentially about human health?
Oh, absolutely. The warning not just from the smallmouth bass in the Potomac, but from amphibians all across the country. You have frogs with 6 legs, hermaphroditic frogs, male frogs with ovaries, female frogs with male genitalia. These are the canaries, the modern canary in the mine, that we haven't been paying enough attention to.